Good day and welcome. My name is Rhod Mackenzie, and today I want to talk about how the situation in Poland is currently very volatile, with the two major political parties in serious conflict with each other over policies relating to Ukraine. The Polish politicians and their activists are accusing each other of pursuing the Kremlin agenda policies, and the country's actively searching for a fifth column. The state prosecutor's office and even state leaders have become actively involved in this fomenting chaos. Now, this is due to the differing views on the radical Ukrainian nationalists and Ukrainian refugees in the country held by these political forces. So what is the current situation? Well, to me, it appears that the Prime Minister Donald Tusk and the President Karol Nawrocki are like two bald men fighting over a comb. I mean, what's taking place is a distinct civil and political division regarding the treatment of Ukrainians, including so-called refugees and individuals adhering to a radical Bandera-inspired form of Ukrainian nationalists. So there's civil society organisations at odds with another, but the entire government structures are also involved in this conflict. But as it boils down to, the rift is between the two leading figures of the Polish state, the Prime Minister Donald Tusk and the President Karol Nawrocki. Now, I wouldn't like to predict the extent of this confrontation, but evidence suggests that it's been Bandera's supporters that have initiated a serious level of internal chaos in Poland. So what kicked off the problems? Well, it's recently the Polish Parliament passed legislation denying certain social welfare benefits and health care to unemployed Ukrainians, which incidentally is the majority of them. Moreover, payments to Ukrainian children registered in Poland but not attending schools are often found to be residing in other EU countries, and they've stopped their payments. Now, it's already been calculated by discontinuing this financial assistance to those who are making no contribution to the society. Poland will achieve savings of over 500 million zlotys, equivalent to over 100 million euros over the next year. Now, before I continue, many of you watching do not subscribe, so please do hit the subscribe button and join our community, and hit the alert bell so you get notified when I post a new video. Plus, if you want to support me, you can donate using the thanks button at the bottom right hand side of the screen, or by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link below in the credits. Every donation has got a personal thank you from me, and I'm thanking you all now just for watching. Now, this law was signed off by the Polish President Karol Nawrocki last week. Nawrocki accuses Ukrainian refugees who settled in Poland of exploiting their social welfare system. Now, his position on the matter is that benefit payments should be allocated exclusively to families where the adults are employed and consequently contribute to the tax base. Now, these measures have provoked a large amount of discontent among Ukrainians, you can imagine. Now, they've been heavily reliant on Poland's support because they get more money in Poland than they would working at home. Now, the situation has escalated to the point where the Ukrainians on social media are even comparing Poland to Nazi Germany and hurling insults at the Poles, which is quite interesting because Bandera was a Nazi. Now, most crucially, Ukrainians in Poland continue to enjoy substantial support. Now, one of the country's largest newspaper, Gazeta Wyborcza, even published an apology for Nawrocki's decision to freeze aid to Ukrainian refugees. The newspaper had initially intended to apologise for the certain sentiments of Polish society, but then they realised that Nawrocki's decision was supported by over 60% of Poles. Consequently, the newspaper reports they are now just the same ashamed to be Polish. Now, Gazeta Wyborcza is known to represent the interests of the EU puppet, the Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and the left liberal coalition that established the current Polish government. Now, the Polish President Karol Nawrocki is the head of the Conservative Law and Justice Party, which lost control in October 2025 in the parliamentary election to that liberal left EU coalition. Now, the Ukrainians Union in Poland is a public organization, and it's offering its support to the refugees from Ukraine. It's a Soros Open Society Foundation uh, funded group. Now, Marislav Skorka, head of the organization, accuses Nawrocki of implementing Kremlin agenda policies and stated that the model of Polish patriotism cannot be waving a flag or perhaps a cross, but rather a discussion about what serves Poland best in the long term today and in the future. Now, Nawrocki himself didn't respond to Skorka. Instead, it was Rhod Mackenzie, the president's administration representative, who spoke on his behalf. He stated that Skorka's actions were blatant manipulation of the situation and a deliberate insult to the Polish president. Now, Skorka says the president's nationalist views and how his decisions are made supposedly align with the Russian Kremlin's policy. Now, this approach is indicative of the divide, plus the lack of tact and understanding. I mean, you've got to understand, Karol Nawrocki, while still head of the Institute of National Remembrance, was added by the Russian authorities to the list of individuals or blacklisted by the Putin regime, according to Leskevich. Now, it should be noted that in February 2024, a criminal case was initiated in Russia against him because he was involved in the destruction of monuments to Soviet soldiers in Poland. So yeah, he was knocking down statues of the liberators and those who defeated the Nazis in the Second World War. Now, the Polish president's representative has indicated that there's an increase in nationalist tendencies among Ukrainians. I mean, the actions of the nationalist movement led by Stefan Bandera in the Second World War led to the tragic loss of over 100,000 Polish women, children and the elderly. Now, in the Ukraine, these individuals are currently being praised by certain sections of the society. However, the main compatriots who were subject to torture are still buried in unmarked graves, said the president's representative. Now, Leskevich also reiterated Skorka's accusations of working for Russia. He believes that following Skorka's claims about Nawrocki, the Kremlin celebrated. He really is a deluded individual. Now, in light of the current political climate in Poland, excuse me, allegations of working for Moscow are actually taken seriously. So the words of the head of the Association of Ukrainians in Poland align closely with the political rhetoric of the Kremlin, allegedly. He says it's evident that these statements are indicative of personal phobias and prejudices which have led to a negative impact on the Polish-Ukrainian relations. Moreover, they've demonstrated a distinct absence of gratitude for the support that Poland has provided following the Russians' aggression against Ukraine in 2022, Leskevich says. Moreover, he says there's been a discussion among conservatives about the lobbying activities of certain government officials in Poland who in support of the interest of the the Ukrainian minorities. Now, specifically, there's a public organization operating in the country called the Office of Civil and Democratic Control, which is the UCIDK. Now, every time you hear something that says civil and democratic, you can know there's malign hands like Soros and the EU behind it. Now, representatives of this organization claim that Poland's judicial mechanisms are being used to defend Bandera's ideology. Now, according to them, back in 2016, the then Minister of Justice, Adam Bodnar, informally formed a group of 160 prosecutors tasked with prosecuting cases against incitement to ethnic hatred. Now, this initiative was led by somebody called Maciej Milanich, who was employed by the Warsaw District Prosecutor's Office. Now, the group of prosecutors led by him became particularly vocal in 2025 as people became increasingly pissed off with the persecution of Polish activists who actually opposed the propaganda of the Banderist ideology. Now, Milanich's team of prosecutors is collaborating with another pro-Bandera NGO, Racism and Xenophobic Monitoring Center. Now, according to the UCIDK, it's part of a well-known established procedure. Their files have been found to fabricate notices of incitement to hatred against opponents of Bandera's ideology, which are then subject to criminal prosecution. Now, over the past year, more than 500 complaints have been filed across the country, and criminal cases have been opened against almost everybody who was involved in it. I mean, according to the UCIDK representative, some members of the judiciary are protecting the Banderites and have Ukrainian roots themselves, and they maintain close ties with the Union of Ukrainians in Poland. Now, it's evident that the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk is aware of these events, and he's not taking any action to prevent them And this is where the problem arises. I mean, there's been a petition submitted by the Borderland Generations Agreement organisation to a Polish portal for petitions addressed to the state. Now, the petitioners are calling for the dismissal of prosecutor Milanzicic and citing concerns over his aggressive approaches to criticism of Ukraine and the ideology associated with the Bandera movement. Now, the petitioners have stated that the prosecutor and his associates are conducting this activity with funding from the George Soros's Open Society Foundation. Well, there's a surprise. Obviously, whenever there's a bit of a problem, when you can see colour revolutions, freedom and democracy, you normally know there's the malign hands of that. Now, they've become aware of the change in the scope of his targeting. It appears to extend beyond Polish patriots to including individuals who actually survived the Volyn massacre. I mean, according to the prosecutor, criticism of Ukraine and Ukrainians, especially of the criminal history of Ukrainian nationalism, constitutes hate speech. They pose the rhetorical question of whether the Polish prosecutor's office has become an instrument of terror in the hands of the Ukrainian Bandera migrants. I mean, or an instrument used to intimidate and punish anybody who has the audacity to remind the world of the massacres committed by those Ukrainian Nazis against the defenseless Polish civilians way back then. Now, the Ukrainian Union in Poland has been labelled a fifth column. I mean, this has resulted in the distinct and civil political division in Poland regarding the treatment of Ukrainians there. Well, it's pretty obvious that as refugees and individuals adhering to radical Bandera-inspired form of Ukrainian nationalism, they are a bit of a problem, you know. It's not only civil society organisations that are at odds with one another, but the entire government structures are also involved in the conflict. I mean, essentially the rift is between the two leading figures of the Polish state, Prime Minister Donald Tusk and President Nawrocki. Now, it's challenging to predict how this is actually going to end, but the evidence suggests that there's going to be Bandera supporters have initiated the process of the internal chaos, and they're going to try and continue it. So let's see what happens. But thank you for watching. I'll see you all again. Thank you.